it was detrimental to me personally. Every time I watch it, I feel like I'm being stabbed in my eyes. Hello everyone, welcome. So I know it's been a little bit. I have had to take a bit of a break because of some stuff going on in my personal life. And so I have not been able to be online like at all for quite some time now, like over a month. It's been a minute since I've sat down to film anything and I just feel weird even having makeup on right now because I've just been gremlining for the past month. But I am back. I am here with a new video for you all today, and I'm really excited because today we are going to be doing one of my favorite things, which is tier ranking. I love a good tier ranking, and we are specifically going to be tier ranking book to TV adaptations. I did a video like this a couple of years ago, tier ranking book to movie adaptations, and I think I also had a few book to TV adaptations in there as well. But in the past few years, there have been a lot of new book to TV adaptations that have come out. I think it's gotten more popular than book to movie adaptations. Not necessarily more popular, but there are a lot more TV adaptations than there used to be, which is extremely exciting because it means that I can make a video specific to TV adaptations and rank all of the ones that I've seen, because there are some recent ones that came out that a lot of people have been asking my opinion on, and I haven't had a place to talk about them yet, so I think this will be the perfect place to do that. I've been watching a lot of TV lately because I've been stuck at home and I wanted to do something kind of more passive. I haven't had any energy to read. I haven't read a book in like over a month. I just finished Succession, which was fantastic, literally one of my new favorite shows of all time. That show is excellent. So I've just been thinking a lot about TV, which is kind of what inspired me to do this video today. I've also had TV shows on my mind a lot recently because my new journal, the A Clockwork Reader Film and TV Journal, is coming out at the end of this month, June 27th. It's being released, which is so soon. It's really caught up to me, and I can't believe it's already almost here. So if you would like to pre-order the journal, the link is in the description box. Again, it comes out June 27th. It's a journal to track all of the movies and shows that you watch. You can get creative with it and do like some collaging and artistic stuff in here, or you can just record everything that you watch, whatever you decide to do. I'm very, very excited about this. I just got my author copies recently, so I have like a ton of them now just sitting in my room, which is really exciting. So yes, if you would like to support me and buy a copy of the journal, the link is in the description box once again. Now really quickly, before we get into the tier ranking, I want to thank today's sponsor, which is Native. Native is a brand that I've worked with in the past, and they are my absolute favorite deodorant brand. I quite literally will not use a different deodorant. I got 3 of the scents this time. I got the unscented one, the aloe and green tea, which is a new one that I tried, and the cucumber and mint. I'm personally very sensitive to smells, which is why I really like the unscented one. I use everything pretty much unscented. All of my skincare products are always unscented, but I do like some scents, and these specifically I do really enjoy. I love the aloe and green tea scent. It's very refreshing. It's very mild, which I appreciate, as is the cucumber and mint. This is actually my favorite one and the one I always go back to. And I personally really like using Native because they're vegan and cruelty free. Their deodorants are aluminum and paraben free, which are all really important to me. They're made with clean and simple ingredients like coconut oil and shea butter. They even have a line made exclusively for sensitive skin, which are the ones that I personally chose. They're very smooth, they're not sticky at all, and they offer 72-hour odor protection, which is great when you're like me and you're an anxious, sweaty girl. So yeah, definitely highly recommend using Native deodorant. If you would like to try them out, use my link and code Clockwork3 to get 20% off your first purchase at Native. This offer is available site-wide, but only for a limited time, so stock up and save. So again, thank you to Native for sponsoring today's video, but without any further ado, let's get into tier ranking all of the book to TV adaptations I have seen. Okay, so here we go. This is my tier list. As you can see, there are far fewer tiers than I usually have. I usually have a ton of tiers because I like separating things out. I feel like there's a lot of nuance. Even when I rank things and we're really simplifying it here, I like having the nuance of having lots of tiers. Also partially because I have not seen that many book to show adaptations. There are quite a few, it's just I haven't read all of the books for a lot of them, so that's why this list can't be as long as the movie adaptation one that I've made. So we're going with like a smaller list, but I feel like it's still a good pool. I have a lot to say about most of these. So the qualifications for this were that I have to have watched the entire show and also read the entire book/book series, except there's just like 2 caveats in here. There's one where I have not read the book, and when we get to it I'll explain why I'm deciding to put it on this list, and another one where the show is technically not based on one specific book but just like a series, so it's kind of like a spin-off type of thing. So those are the only 2 that are not as, you know, just a direct adaptation or one where I haven't read the book. But besides that, I've read the book for all of these and I've watched pretty much the entire show for all of them. I gave up on a couple of them because like I didn't like them, but besides that, it's fine. Anyway, long-winded explanation aside, let's get into the tiers. So first on the top tier, the God tier, we have Better Than the Book, self-explanatory. Then we have Book, Handshake, Show. So basically the book and the show are equally as good in my opinion. Then we have You Don't Need to Read the Book. This one I specifically made for a couple of the ones on this list that I didn't really love the book, but I did enjoy the show. So I don't think they're better than the book per se, like some of the God tier ones, but I still liked them more than the book and they were enjoyable shows for the most part, even if I didn't love the source material, if that makes sense. Next we have Read the Book. These are shows that are typically adapted from some of my favorite books where I feel like they just didn't do the book justice. So it's basically like the book was better. And then we have Criminal Offensive Side-Eye, which again, self-explanatory. Put it in jail. I hated this show. It was awful. All right, so I did not put these in any order, so it's kind of random. First up, we have Bridgerton Season 2. I'm specifically choosing Season 2 because the second book, the Anthony Bridgerton book, is the only book I've read in that series, so we're just doing this based off of Season 2 specifically. And this is just easily going in Better Than the Book because it is so clearly better than the book. I don't think anyone is surprised by it. I don't think you're gonna be surprised by like most of these placements except for the ones that you've never heard me talk about before. I did not like the Bridgerton book at all. I could barely get through it. I really just finished it out of spite, but I love the show. It is such a comfort show for me. I've rewatched Season 2 so many times. I am obsessed. It's an embarrassing level of obsession. It's truly so bad, but I do really, really love Season 2. So that's going in Better Than the Book because it's infinitely better than the book and it's just like one of my favorite seasons of a show in general. Okay, next up we have Heartstopper, which I did a reaction to for the first 2 episodes, I think, on my channel, and Season 2 comes out in like August, I think, so very, very soon at this point. But I loved Heartstopper. I loved the graphic novels. I read all of them right before the show came out because I wanted to be prepared for it. It's so heartwarming and cute and just purely joyful. So this is going to go in Book, Handshake, Show because I think it's equally as good as the books. I think the books do certain things better, but I think there's certain things about the adaptation that are more appealing as well. I just really love it. It's made me cry and I've rewatched it so many times. It's just such a wholesome show and they did a fantastic job adapting it. It just feels exactly like the books, which is all you can ever ask of from an adaptation. So yeah, that's going there. Okay, next up we have A Series of Unfortunate Events. I'm gonna put this in the book show tier, the second tier as well, because I think this is a fantastic adaptation. It's been a while since I've seen it. I would say Heartstopper is definitely better in terms of an adaptation, but I still loved the show. It was so enjoyable to watch and I felt like it also very much understood the source material. I read the Series of Unfortunate Events books as an adult actually. I read them maybe like 4 years ago or something for the first time. They're so sad and disturbing in so many ways, but just such a unique series. And I feel like the show did a great job of translating the atmosphere that the books had onto the screen. So yeah, that one's going in the second tier for sure. Okay, next up we have Conversations with Friends. This one is easily going in Read the Book because I hated the show. I couldn't finish the show. I don't know how many episodes it was, but I think I only watched like 5 of them. 5 or 6 of them maybe, and I just couldn't keep going. I got so bored, and I actually really loved the book, surprisingly, because I didn't think I was going to like it. I haven't liked Sally Rooney's other books, so I did not think I was going to like this book, but I really loved the book, and I feel like the adaptation it just didn't work. I feel like there were certain nuances in that book that just do not translate on screen, and I don't know if it was just that or if it was the direction or the screenplay or whatever it was, but something about this didn't work. It didn't work. I don't think anyone liked this. I meant to rank Normal People right after that, so we're gonna go to Normal People next. Normal People, on the other hand, I'm gonna put in You Don't Need to Read the Book. I know you're all gonna get mad at me for every Normal People stan. I like the show better. Personally, I think it works as a show better than it does as a book. I feel like something about it felt more emotional to me when I was watching it rather than just reading it, but I felt the opposite way about Conversations with Friends, and I cannot explain why. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to articulate it, but for some reason, that's just how I felt. Normal People worked as a show. It's still not my favorite show I've ever seen, but I do like it more than I liked the book. But I'd read the book first and then watched it, and I was surprised to see how much more I actually enjoyed the show. So yeah, that's where I'm putting those two. Okay, next up we have Emma. This is a BBC miniseries. I ranked this in my movie adaptation tier ranking as well, I think. So some of these are repeats, but I just wanted to include them anyway because, like I said, there are not that many. I think it's like 6 episodes or something like that, maybe 4, I don't remember. It's like not super long, but I love this adaptation. This is one of my favorite Jane Austen adaptations, and I feel like most people don't talk about it and nobody has seen it. I know a lot of people like the new Emma movie. I've seen it. I thought it was okay. Definitely not the worst Jane Austen adaptation I've seen, but not my favorite by far. This Emma adaptation is the superior adaptation. So I'm gonna put this in book, handshake, show. I don't know what to call that tier, so I'm just calling it that. But anyway, it's really well made. It's definitely a bit older and it has that like BBC look. But I grew up watching Doctor Who and a lot of other BBC shows, so I'm used to that like older style and look to them. And I really, really love it. I feel like it really understands the story again, and it's just a well-made adaptation. Do I think it's as good as the book? No. But it does belong in this tier for sure. So highly recommend it if you haven't watched it. Okay, so next up we have Game of Thrones. So this is the one show on this list where I have not read the book, but I decided to include it anyway because I tried reading the first book a long time ago and I could not get through it. And I just know I'm never going to read it. I feel like I got enough out of what I did read to know that I wouldn't like it. I've seen it so many times. Like I've seen all of Game of Thrones except the final season like at least 4 times. I've rewatched it many times. I went through a phase where I was just like obsessively watching this show. It was a bad time. We don't need to talk about it. But I feel like I know enough about it, and from what I read from that first book, I got a feel for it, so that's why I'm leaving it on here. Also because it's just such a popular show and everyone has pretty much seen it, so I wanted to talk about it anyway because I have no other place to talk about it. So we're talking about it here. It's fine. These are my rules. You don't have to follow the same rules. But Game of Thrones, barring that last season, which I feel like I dislike for different reasons than a lot of people, because most people are really mad about that ending, which I will not spoil in case you've never seen it, but a lot of people are really mad about that ending because of like certain things that happened to certain characters. I am not mad about what happened to certain characters. I personally think that everything that happened, for the most part, to most of those characters is exactly what should have happened. The problem is that it was just so unbelievably rushed and poorly written that we didn't earn what happened to each character, if that makes sense. And I know other people definitely also feel this way, but I feel like a good majority of people get very upset about what happened to a very specific character who I will not name, but I think that that's exactly what should have happened to them. And that was exactly what was always going to happen to them and where they were always going to end up, because it was obvious from the beginning and it did not ruin their character whatsoever. What ruined everything was how rushed everything was. That was the problem, and it absolutely destroyed that last season, which was so tragic because I loved so much of the rest of the show. I also have so many problems with that show. I do not know how to explain how I feel about Game of Thrones. I love it and I also really deeply hate it, and I wouldn't really ever recommend it to people, but like I'd have to really personally know you and then I could recommend it to you. But a part of me deeply loves that show and certain things about it. So yeah, anyway, long-winded rant about Game of Thrones over. I'm gonna put this in you don't need to read the book. I know I've only read like maybe 50 pages of the first book, and that's definitely not enough to judge the first book compared to the first season or whatever, but I don't care because again, these are my rules, this is my channel, this is my video, so I am judging it based off of just those 50 pages. This is not to say that I think that George R.R. Martin is not a good writer. I don't know, I would have to actually read the entire book, but I just do not see myself ever committing to actually reading the entirety of the Game of Thrones series. Maybe if he ever finishes it, then I'll read it, but even then I don't think that I will. I also need to go on a mini rant here really quickly because this is very important to me and something that I use as a metric to judge people on, and that is specifically people's opinion on Sansa Stark, because Sansa Stark is my favorite character in all of Game of Thrones, and anybody who hates her, like the people who truly hate Sansa, you're just a misogynist. I cannot stand people who hate Sansa Stark because she's my favorite character and she's the best character and the smartest character in that entire show. But anyway, that's my Game of Thrones rant over. Okay, next up we have Rings of Power. So this is the other show on here that had like a little bit of a caveat. The Rings of Power is adapted from like the Lord of the Rings universe. So it's not based off a specific book. There are elements in it that are from the Silmarillion, if you've read that, which I've read like excerpts of before, but I've never read the entire thing. So it's just based off of like lore from the Lord of the Rings series. And I've only read the first Lord of the Rings book and The Hobbit. So I'm counting that as having read it and watching the show because I feel like there's no specific book book, you know? So we're just gonna go with it anyway. But this show was a mess. I'm gonna put it in read the book. I wanted to like this so badly, like so badly, because I love Lord of the Rings. Those movies are some of my all-time favorite movies. I rewatch them constantly, and I really wanted to like this, and I really liked so much of the cast. I feel like they honestly did a really good job in terms of acting as well, and there was such a high budget for this show. Like, there was no reason for it to be as boring as it was, but it was unfortunately so deeply boring. I almost didn't finish it, which is really sad. I did, because it's Lord of the Rings and I had to push myself through, but it was not fun. I need TV to go back to making really great fantasy shows, like high fantasy shows. That's what was so fun about Game of Thrones. I feel like we need more high fantasy shows, and we really don't get a lot of them. And I feel like there's like a little bit of a resurgence of it. I feel like we are starting to kind of get some stuff with Rings of Power, House of the Dragon, and Shadow and Bone, which we'll get to too. But I want more high fantasy shows, like well done high fantasy shows, because this one had all the potential, but it did not reach it, unfortunately. And I was really rooting for it. And also, picky, but like the elves looked so odd. Their hair just made no sense, and they just did not look like elves. They looked like they had Instagram face. That was the problem. You know how people talk about how certain actors don't have like a face that works in like a period drama because they look too modern? That's how I felt about so many of the elves. They just did not work, especially Elrond. Like, he just did not look like an elf. He looked like he knew what Instagram was. So yeah, anyway, that was a very big disappointment for me personally in the last year, because I was so looking forward to that show, and it did not live up to my expectations. Okay, next up we have Daisy Jones and the Six, and this is the one I've been waiting to talk about because this is the one that people have been asking me about ever since it came out. Because if you know me at all, you know Daisy Jones and the Six is one of my favorite books of all time. I love that book. I've read it multiple times and I think about it constantly still. And the show came out and I was so excited about it. Okay, I was so thrilled to watch this show, and I did not love it. And I'm really sad to say that. I feel like it unfortunately gets worse as it goes on. I liked it a lot more at the beginning. I had no problems at first. At first I could like tell they were changing things, but it wasn't that big of a deal. And then it wasn't until the end, until we specifically get to that scene with Camilla and Daisy. If you've watched it or read the book, you know what I'm talking about. Actually, if you've read the book, you don't know what I'm talking about because they changed everything completely, and that's the problem. There's a confrontation between Camilla and Daisy, again without spoiling anything, that in the book is one of the greatest scenes in the entire book. It is so emotional. It's pivotal in that it gives you your understanding of these characters, of Daisy Jones as a person and Camilla and their relationship specifically, and how this is not a story about two girls fighting over some guy. But the show stripped it of all of that. The show turned it into the two of them pretty much just fighting over Billy, and it lost so much of the nuance and so much of the depth that was in the book, so much of the essential parts of the story. Oh my god, like I was so mad after I watched that last episode. I could not stop talking about it and complaining about it to my friends who are also watching, who've also read the book, and I was just so unbelievably frustrated and mad and angry and disappointed because I wanted to love it, because I do really like certain things about it. A lot of the casting was really well done. It was filmed well and written well for the most part. The cinematography was nice. A lot of it looked like Daisy Jones, but it didn't feel like Daisy Jones in terms of the characters themselves. Like, the heart of it wasn't there. I did enjoy a lot of the music. There are a couple songs that I really love. I really love Honeycomb, and I really like The River. The River is my favorite one probably. I'm still a little bit bitter, I'm not gonna lie. So this is easily gonna go in read the book. It's definitely not as good as the book. I would never watch the show again, and I personally wouldn't really recommend it to anyone. It's just a show to watch in general. Like, if you want this story, read the book. It's so much more worth it. It's not nearly as good as the original book. Yeah, I'm still very sad. Very sad about that. Next up, we have 13 Reasons Why, which is another one I have talked about in my tier ranking, my other tier ranking video, my movie one. Easily criminal offensive side-eye. This is one of the worst shows I've ever seen in my life. I've talked about it multiple times. I talked about how much I hate the book. I only watched seasons 1 and 2, and I have unfortunately watched, I didn't even know that they were edited, but I've watched the unedited version. Apparently, there are a couple scenes in those 2 seasons that were considered by so many people, myself including, so unbelievable unbelievably unnecessarily violent and graphic that Netflix went back and changed them. They re-edited the scenes, so they are not as graphic as they used to be. I watched the original versions because I've had people describe to me what they saw when they watched it, and it's not what I saw. I saw something much worse than what is in that show now. I truly only watched the second season because I was in a dark place and I was self-sabotaging. Sometimes you just watch or consume like really bad media when you don't feel well, and it's just a really bad habit, which I don't recommend to anybody, and I'm trying to not do that anymore, and I definitely do it less than I used to, but that was at that time years ago, and I would never ever recommend the show to anybody. It's awful. And I think I did see certain things about the third season where there's a redemption arc for truly the worst character in that entire show, and it was vile, absolutely vile. I cannot believe the way they tried to market that as like, this is about mental health and this is about like having a conversation, when it was literally just nonstop violence, gore, self-harm, just triggering content after triggering content, and detrimental to literally all of its viewers. So yeah, truly one of the worst shows ever made. I feel like there's no debate on that. Okay, next up we have The Summer I Turned Pretty, which is getting season 2 very soon, and I'm really excited about it because I really enjoyed this show. It's going in book and show handshake because I honestly don't remember the majority of the book. I read it a long time ago, and I don't think I read the third one. I think I only read the first 2, but I liked the first season a lot. It's not my favorite show I've ever seen, but I feel like it was a good adaptation. It was really cute. It was heartfelt. It made me emotional, and it was a well-made show, and I'm excited for the next season. And it reminded me a lot of the YA kind of shows that I used to watch, like the ABC Family, now Freeform shows that I used to watch when I was like in middle school, high school, like Pretty Little Liars, like the early seasons of those that were made for like a teen audience. And it felt like it had the same vibe as those shows, where I feel like in recent years a lot of teen shows have just failed miserably. They have just not been well written. But this one I felt was very genuinely well written and just an enjoyable show overall. So yeah, I'm very excited for the next season. Okay, next up we have the opposite of The Summer I Turned Pretty, as in a teen show that was extremely poorly written in the past few years. That is Shadowhunters. So I mentioned earlier that like I've not been doing very well, and I've been like dealing with a lot of personal stuff recently. If you want to know how poorly I've been feeling, I started rewatching Shadowhunters, okay? Yes, you can be concerned for me. It's fine. I'm currently on season 2. It's worse than I remember, which is actually saying a lot because I hated this show as it was airing, but it is so much worse than I remember it. There used to be redeeming qualities for me. There's not a single redeeming quality now. Not a single one. It's so bad. Magnus and Alec used to be the only thing that like I could stomach in that show. Even they're bad. I can't take it. It's so awful. This is some of the worst acting I think I've ever seen. Some of the worst script writing I've ever seen. It's so offensive in every sense of the word. But at the time, it was really hard to even talk about how bad it was because the fandom for that show, which was oddly very separated from the fandom of the book series, they loved that show so much. That's why it has 3 seasons, which is crazy to me. It should have been canceled after season 1. But the fans of the show were really, really hardcore. I remember this was like early on in my booktube days when people would talk about it online. If you ever said anything negative about the Shadowhunters show, the fans would come for you. They were ride or die for this horrible script, and I don't know why. I know the source material, like the original Mortal Instruments series, is not that great either. This is coming from someone who loved those books as a kid. I'm fully aware of what they are, okay? Like I'm not delusional about that. But I think anyone has to admit that the source material was still better than this show. Absolutely painful. It's going in criminal offensive side-eye for very different reasons than 13 Reasons Why. It's not nearly as like, you know, detrimental to society as that show was, but it was detrimental to me personally. Every time I watch it, I feel like I'm being stabbed in my eyes. Okay, next up we have Anne with an E. This is easily going in better than the book. I've read Anne of Green Gables. I think it's an enjoyable book, but I didn't read it as a kid, so I don't think it really feels the same for me as it does for a lot of other people. But this show is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. I talked about it recently in a video about my favorite shows and movies. It is so so phenomenal. It is so emotional. It is one of those things that I watched where I was like, I feel like this understands me on some level that I did not know how to vocalize before. And it was just one of those things that touched me so deeply. It makes me feel really nostalgic, and it's so beautifully made. It is criminal that it was cut short. It deserved more time for us to fully explore the ending arc, but I still love it so, so much. Truly one of the best shows. If you get anything from this video at all, just please watch Anne with an E. Okay, next up we have Shadow and Bone, which I made a video on recently talking about the second season. This one, I know exactly where I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it in Read the Book because I do think the book is better. I obviously really love that series, and Six of Crows, as you all know, is like one of my favorite book series of all time. So I was so excited about this adaptation. And season 1, I really enjoyed. Is it as good as the book? No, but it's still a good show and it was enjoyable to watch. It has problems for sure, but I still really loved it. I rewatched it multiple times. Season 2, there are things about it that I really, really loved. Things about it that like I'm so glad we got to see on screen because I love the cast so much. So much. They're the perfect cast. The script, don't love so much. It's not the best. There were so many issues I had with season 2. I talked about them all in that video, but I still want a season 3. I want the Six of Crows spinoff desperately because this cast is just too perfect to let go. So I want more. I just don't think it's a great adaptation. It's nowhere near as bad as something like Shadowhunters. I still think it's better than Daisy Jones and the Six. Actually, I'm gonna put it all the way in the front of Read the Book, but there were just so many missed opportunities, I think, especially in that second season where they were just packing it with everything, with like 4 books in one for some reason. It was overwhelming and convoluted and it made no sense story-wise, and they just messed with a lot of the characters, and I did not enjoy a lot of that second season. Hopefully, if the writer's strike goes well and our writers are paid well, they can come back for another season or a Six of Crows spinoff and we can get the show that we actually deserve, because I know they have it in them to do it. So I believe there's a chance. I believe there's a chance for it to be done and for it to be done well. Okay, and then lastly, we have You. I mentioned this one in the movie tier ranking as well, but I think at the time only season 1 was out and I did not like it at all. And I've since watched all of it except for the second half of season 4. I didn't like season 2 either, but season 3 of You was so funny to me. I literally love that season. So I read the book and I've only read the first one. I haven't read Hidden Bodies or anything else. And compared to the first season, the book is infinitely better. Like there's no need to watch the first season. And I even told this to one of my friends who wanted to watch the show, who had seen the first season. I told them to just skip everything and watch season 3 because especially if you live in California, in Northern California, in the Bay Area, because that's where that season is set, there's so much about Bay Area culture in that season that is just absolutely hysterical. Like some of it is so painfully accurate. And now I kind of watch You as like a comedy slash a satire rather than what I think they originally wanted it to be, which was more of like a psychological thriller, which is what the book is. But if you watch the show as more of like a comedy, it's a lot more enjoyable, and that's how I watch the show now. So I actually really enjoyed that third season. Overall, as a whole, I don't think the show is fantastic. I'm gonna put it in Read the Book because I do think if you want a psychological thriller, the first book is really well done, and the first season does not capture that at all. But if you want to watch a season of the show, just watch season 3 of the show and just like look up a synopsis of the first 2 seasons so you're not confused, because season 3 was just honestly so much fun for me. All right, but there we have it. That is the full tier ranking. Again, not that many tiers because there aren't that many adaptations I've seen in terms of TV, and hopefully they will start making more adaptations, book to TV adaptations, because I really like TV adaptations. I feel like they really, really work with some books, and I feel like it's a much better direction to go with for a lot of books than a movie because it works better, especially for something like a series. Not always, but sometimes it really just depends. But yeah, let me know if you've watched any of these shows slash read any of these books and how you would rank them, and also any other book to TV adaptations you think I should read slash watch. I would very much be interested. I'm always looking for new TV shows to watch because if I am not reading, I am watching a show or a movie, typically a show. But that is it for this video. I hope you all have enjoyed watching this. Again, don't forget to check out the Clockwork Reader film and TV journal in the description box below, which is out June 27th. If you would like to follow me on any of my social media, all of my links are in the description box as always. But thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!